Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku become Ultra Instinct Part 4. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. One major difference is that Tensei is your sibling, Izuku thought. However, he knew Tenya didn't have any malicious intentions, so he didn't mind too much. Initially, Eri was tense as she sat upon the shoulders of the blue-haired teen. However, after a while she relaxed once she realized that he could be trusted. Not long after, she had her arms and head rested on top of Kenya's head, softly snoring away. Izuku looked at his sister with contentment. The fact that she had people to call friends now made his heart swell with joy. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku become Ultra Instinct Part 1. Called out. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel. I just wanted and like this video and also share this video with your friends as well. I have created my other videos playlist where you can watch my all videos easily. Check out as well. Let's start this video. I appreciate. I'm sorry, man, but I'm afraid there's no hope for him. Those words were spoken to Izuku Midoryia 10 years ago, but I'm certain that day his mother had taken him to the doctor to be evaluated regarding her concern for his quirk, or rather lack of one. The event would be something that he would never forget, and he would always remember how the conversation went down. This can't be like her. There has to be some mistake. Izuku added. His mother questioned worriedly. Pardon me if this question seems a bit intrusive, but regarding quirks, you are fourth generation, correct? The doctor asked. As tears streamed down, Inko shook her head. Izuku mouthed to Tenya and gave us a minute. Tenya nodded his head. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku become Ultra Instinct Part 2. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video and also share this video with your friends. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. The boy found that the technique was physically draining as he would strain his muscles to maintain the form as he used a higher percentage of his power. After some experimenting, Izuku found that using 5% was where he was most comfortable. Both him and All Might had been immensely satisfied with the progress he made using the quirk. However, his progress with autonomous movement had been anything but stellar. I just wanted to remind you that I do think you are amazing, especially with how you treat your little sister. It's easy to tell. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Deku become Ultra Instinct Part 3. Before I start, please because I don't have any experience being one. I just fear that there are some things I'm not doing right. Of course there are things you're not doing right. You're not perfect, you're human. What matters is what you mentioned earlier, trying your best. I believe if you continue to put your best foot forward you'll have nothing to worry about, Izuku. Ichako wondered why Izuku went silent until it hit her that she had just addressed him by his first name. As she realized this, her eyes went wide and her face red. She shook her hand frantically as she profusely apologized. However, Izuku's response wasn't what she expected. Maybe you should listen to your own advice about not apologizing when there's nothing to apologize for. If we're friends, it would make sense for us to use each other's first name, right? I guess, but it's just weird. Well, I don't think it's weird, Ichako. Well, maybe a little bit. But you're right. It would make sense for us to be on a first name basis, being friends and all. I guess it'll just take some time getting used to. Yeah, but I don't think it'll be too much for us to handle. Izuku responded as he shot Ichako a carefree smile. She returned it and shot him a thumbs up. Won't be too much for us at all. Having arrived at Midoriya's apartment, both Tenya and Ichako said their goodbyes to the Midoriya family. Bye Tenya, bye Ichako, Eri called out. Bye Eri, hopefully I can see you again soon. Ichako replied. Farewell Eri, I enjoyed accompanying you and your brother to the bakery. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Remember to brush your teeth. You don't want all that sugar you ate to cause cavities, Tenya added. I'll remember, Eri replied. Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. I'll see you both tomorrow, Izuku said. Later Izuku. Goodbye Midoriya, I shall see you tomorrow. After they left, Inko came to ask how Eri's and Izuku's day went. Excited to tell her, Eri spoke first. It was super fun. Ichako is really nice, and also she thought my dress was pretty. She did this cool thing, where she made some what were they called again Izuku? Cherry blossom petals. Yeah, cherry blossom petals float really high into the air. Then they all fell, almost like it started to rain on them. And Tenya is really nice too. He's also funny. At first I thought he was scary though. Well, I'm glad you had fun Eri. And how about you Izuku? I assume you enjoyed yourself as well? Inko asked. You bet. Achako, and I were able to learn a lot of things about Iida, and also the bakery we went to had an amazing selection. Inko raised an eyebrow after hearing Izuku refer to the brunette using her first name. I'm happy to hear that you got to know Iida better. But Achako, and I? Where did that come from? When you introduced her to me, you addressed her by her last name. Now, you two are on a first name basis. Did she end up taking my advice? Izuku groaned as he realized the hole he dug himself into. This is going to be a long conversation. The following day, the students of Class 1 sat around and chatted with each other until their homeroom teacher arrived. Eventually, the scruffy-haired teacher made his way into the classroom, and his presence made everyone in the class quiet down. With the same tired expression he had yesterday, Shota told the class, "Don't bother getting comfortable. Hurry up and put on your gym clothes. We're heading out to the training grounds." So this is probably what he told me to be ready for, Izuku thought. Not long after, all the students made their way to the training grounds. Shota stood in front of the class as he got ready to explain what he had brought them out there for. Today, you all will engage in a quirk analysis assessment. A standard physical evaluation test you took in middle school, you'll do today, except you all will be able to use your quirks. I have no idea why the country still insists on prohibiting quirks when calculating the averages of those records, but at the end of the day I don't make the rules. Personally, I find it to be irrational and a real hindrance when estimating how much potential someone has. But homeroom is only 10 minutes. There's no way we'll be able to finish the test by then, exclaimed one student who had dark blonde hair with one black streak running through it. I'm aware, which is why I have already contacted your teachers. If you all hurry, you all can be finished by lunch. If you decide to lollygag, then I guess you all will just go hungry. Shota replied. He then turned to Izuku and asked him, Midoriya, you placed first in the entrance exam. How far could you throw a softball in middle school? Izuku's eyes went wide as he was put on the spot. Not extremely far. Just 55 meters. Shota raised an eyebrow upon hearing the boy's response. From the way he looks right now, he should be more than capable of throwing a softball a lot further than 55 meters. So I can assume that he has conditioned himself since then. There really is more to this child than meets the eye. While that number is rather average, I want to see your record with you using your quirk. Standing in the circle anything goes, however you cannot leave it, understand? Izuku gulped and slowly approached the circle. As he tried to psyche himself up, Shota told him, hurry up, we don't have all day. There's no need for me to use Ultra Instinct. For the shorter test, I'll use 20% full cowling while for the longer ones I'll just use 5%. Now that I know what I need to do, all I have to do is execute. Taking a deep breath, Izuku let the green electricity from 20% full cowling trickle down his body. Red veins of energy glowed as he powered up. He drew back his arm and launched the ball with all the might he could muster. A series of booms resounded as the ball traveled higher into the air. The device in Shota's hand started to beep, indicating that the ball had finally landed. He held up the device so that the class could see the result. 1,583.6 meters, a boy with weird-looking purple hair exclaimed. Knowing the limits of what you can do is the first step in analyzing what types of heroes you'll become, Shota explained. The class continued to gawk in awe seeing the distance displayed on the device until one girl with pink skin and hair exclaimed, whoa, this looks fun. We'll get to use our quirks as much as we want. The hero course sure is awesome, said another student with chin-length black hair and a happy-go-lucky smile. Atsuki, on the other hand, didn't express the same excitement that his classmates had. The result Izuku had received perplexed him immensely. I thought his quirk enhanced his reflexes. So why the hell is he so strong? Not to mention, his eyes change color when he activates his quirk, but when he throws that softball they don't. It almost seems like he has two different quirks. But that's impossible, because no one has been known to have more than one. So that only means one thing. The day of the slime villain he was holding back the entire damn time. I knew from that day that he was stronger, but is the gap between us really that huge? The sound of Shota's voice derailed Katsuki's train of thought. Fun you say. You're hoping to become heroes attending a school with one of the most advanced curriculums in the country, and you think it'll be all fun and games. Allow me to kill that notion now. The person who places lowest in this test will be expelled. Ichako spoke up, finding the consequences of placing the lowest to be extreme. You can't expel us. This is only our second day here. A lot of us have worked hard to get here, so to kick us out would be unfair. Well, you should take this opportunity to learn how to get used to unfairness, because you'll be dealing with it for the rest of your life if you make it as a pro hero. Calamity exists and will continue to, no matter if it's fair or not. As a hero, it'll be your job to correct all that unfairness. Allow me to take this time to explain this to you all. If you thought attending UA would be a cakewalk, then you're in for a rude awakening. This school will put you through hell and back to make sure you grow into exemplary heroes. If you want to be coddled, go ahead and leave right now." Shota looked around and saw that everyone had remained where they were standing. The sight caused him to break out into a small grin. "Well, at least I know this group isn't afraid of a little hard work. Show me why you belong here." But that being said, the Quirk assessment test began. First, the class started with a 50-meter dash. Using 20% full cowling, Izuku was able to clinch first place with a mind-boggling time of 2.58 seconds. With his Quirk engine, Tenya was able to take second place with 3.04 seconds. The second event was the grip strength test. Izuku again was able to secure first with a grip strength of 612 kilograms, 1,349.23 pounds. Second was a student that had 6 arms, which put up a more than respectable score of 540 kilograms, 1,190.5 pounds. For Izuku, the placements he received for the first and second test were the same for the third and fourth. The fifth test, however, he placed third. First was Ochako with an unbeatable score of infinity. The person to claim second was a girl with long black hair tied into a spiky ponytail. Izuku had seen a cannon emerge from her skin, and with it, she fired the softball to beat his distance. While he excelled in the upper body training test, Izuku was obliterated by the girl with pink hair and the seated toe touches, and was embarrassed by Tenya in the endurance run. Once they finished the test, Shota stood in front of the class with the results. "Alright, time for the results." Shota hesitated to speak so that he could see the looks of anxiety on his student's face. Not many things made the underground hero amused, but this was an exception. "Everyone passed, I was just lying about expelling someone." However, Shota looked towards Katsuki. "If I don't see giving your 100% soon, you won't be here much longer. You're only here because I see potential in you, but if you won't use it to the fullest, I won't see a point for you to be here." Katsuki looked away bashfully as he stuffed his hands in his pockets. "Anyways, we're done here. These are the rankings for the test. If you so desire, feel free to look at them," Shota said. Izuku looked at the projected screen and found his name at the number 1 spot. He felt himself swell with pride in knowing that his hard work had paid off. When it came to physical evaluation tests such as these, he never placed number 1. "Well, congratulations, Izuku." Izuku turned around to the side of a smiling Ochako. "Thanks, but you did really well too, Ochako. I guess. It's just that 10th place doesn't feel all that impressive. I still think you did a fantastic job. Plus, I'm pretty sure no school has had a softball throw of infinity. You definitely showed that you belong here." Ochako chuckled. "You're probably right, thanks. You know, you're really good at cheering people up. Just trying to be more like a certain person I look up to." "All Might, right. How did you know?" "I could have been referencing anybody," Izuku stammered. "Sorry Izuku, but it's obvious." Ochako giggled. After the test, the class went to lunch. Izuku shoveled his food down due to him working up an appetite from the assessment. Seated beside him were Ochako and Tenya, who were also scarfing down their food. After swallowing, Ochako called Izuku's name to get his attention. He turned around with his eyes wide and his cheeks full of rice. A light hue of red graced Ochako's face. "So adorable." She regained focus and asked him, "Izuku, why didn't your eyes turn silver when you activated your quirk? I thought normally that's what happens." Izuku started to panic internally. Think. After swallowing his rice, he told her, "My eyes only turn silver when my reflexes are enhanced. If I'm only using the strength portion of my quirk, my eyes remain the same color." "Oh okay, I didn't know you could pick and choose what specifically you wanted to be enhanced. I was always under the impression that everything was enhanced at once. You have quite the unique quirk, Midoryia," Tenya commented. "I'll say," Ochako added. Izuku let out a sigh of relief, seeing that the answer had satisfied her. However, Katsuki had been eavesdropping on their conversation, and Izuku's explanation confirmed his suspicion. He really was holding back after lunch. Izuku eagerly awaited the start of hero basic training. His face brightened once he saw his mentor and idol step through the door. "I'm coming through the door like a normal person," the voice of All Might boomed. The class erupted into conversation, seeing the number 1 hero walk into the classroom. "Alright, settle down." The class settled down as they were instructed. "Welcome to Hero Basic Training. This class provides special training to mold you into heroes." All Might coughed in his hand before softly muttering, "It also gives you a ton of credits as well." After an awkward silence made its way present, All Might once again spoke. "Today, you'll be doing battle training, and for that you'll need your costumes." A series of panels slid from the wall, revealing the class's costumes. "Yes," the class exclaimed. "After you get changed, come out to ground beta in ranking order." The excitement Izuku had dissipated instantly. He was first, which meant that everyone would have been in the locker room as he was changing. The burns he had on his body would be hard to miss. As soon as All Might dismissed them, Izuku ran to the locker room to get changed, before everyone got there. "I guess he's pretty excited, huh?" said the student with dark blonde hair, attempting to get a few laughs from the class. "Maybe having that same excitement would help you out, Kaminari, being 16th and all," said another student who had earphone jacks hanging off her earlobes. "You're one to talk, considering I'm ranked higher than you, Jiru," Kaminari replied. "You're only one rank above me. Also, I wasn't the one going on about how great I was just to end up near the bottom of the class." "Touché," Kaminari said with a forlorn look on his face. In the locker room, Izuku put on his costume with haste, but he was also careful not to damage it. His costume hadn't been made by a support department, rather it was made by his mother. It was a symbol of her love and would be even if death separated them. After finally getting on his costume, Izuku looked at himself in the mirror. He had 2 green strands that protruded from the top of his costume, which took inspiration from All Might's hairstyle. Additionally, the respirator on his suit had a smile painted onto it, which mirrored the smile All Might always had. On the green suit, silver lines were painted down his arms and the sides of his body. He had poured out his heart to his mom on how guilty he felt of what he had done to Tao. He also told his mother the advice Krillin had given him about finding the silver lining. His mother agreed that it was sound advice, which probably influenced the silver lines painted on his costume. It was a reminder for him that as a hero, he would constantly have to make the best out of the worst. He walked out the locker room, oozing determination. However, it was unknown to Izuku that Tenya had arrived in the locker room shortly after he did. Not many things startled Tenya, but the gross amount of burns on his friend's body made him feel nauseous. "Ready to get started, you bunch of newbies?" All Might asked. The class didn't verbally respond, but just from their posture he was able to tell that they were. As the class waited for the training to start, they conversed amongst themselves. Izuku was admiring Tenya's suit, which looked like robotic knight armor, until he heard a voice call his name. "Izuku, I like your costume. Overall, I'd say it's real practical looking, but those silver lines make it stand out." Recognizing the voice to be Ichako's, Izuku turned around to thank her for the compliment, however his eyes nearly bulged out of his head once he saw her in costume. The bodysuit she wore hugged all her curves and left little to his imagination. Like a computer that had been infected with malware, Izuku felt his brain crash as he gawked at his friend. Humuna. "Izuku, don't look at me like that, it's embarrassing. When I submitted my costume design, I didn't realize they would make it skin tight," Ichako exclaimed. "Well, I don't really think he's really complaining, am I right? Come on, give him some." The student with purple orbs for hair held his hand up as he waited for Izuku to give him a high five. Izuku gave him a confused look instead. All Might glanced at Izuku's costume and immediately recognized where he pulled inspiration from. Couldn't be any more obvious, young Midoriya. He stepped up to the front of the class to get the training underway. "Today, you'll be doing indoor anti-personnel battle training. Statistically, since most villain battles take place indoors, we have you engage in this training to prepare you for most of the villains you'll encounter. In this training you'll be in pairs, one pair will be heroes, and the other will be villains. They will then face off in a 2-on-2 battle." As Izuku listened to the directions, he realized that All Might had probably pulled influence from this test when he was training him for the entrance exam. Knowing this, Izuku felt confident going into it because he knew he had more experience than any of his other classmates. Not to mention, while he may not have fought a villain in this particular setting, he had general experience fighting a villain, and on top of that winning. "Excuse me, but I just have 2 questions. The first is, what conditions determine victory, and the second question I have is, how do we go about dividing ourselves into teams?" asked a student who was clad in a red leotard and yellow skirt. "Ah, good questions, young Yaoi Rozu. Regarding your first question, in these simulations a nuclear weapon will be present. For those on the hero's side, if they capture the weapon, that's a victory, however, the heroes only have a limited time to do so. For those on the villain side, victory can be attained by either capturing both heroes or protecting the weapon until the timer runs out. To answer your second question, teams will be determined by drawing lots." "I see, I have no further questions," Yaoi Rozu said. "Excellent, we'll go ahead and form teams if no one else has any additional questions." After drawing lots, Izuku was happy to find that he was on a team with a familiar face. Ichako shared the same sentiment as well. "It's awesome we're on the same team. Let's kick some villain butt," Ichako said as she pumped her fist into the air. "Right," Izuku agreed. After the rest of the students had been partnered up, it was now time to determine the first match. "Alright, first up is Team A as the heroes and Team D as the villains," All Might exclaimed. Izuku sobered up from the excitement as he realized just who was on Team D. For the first time in a while he would be face to face with Katsuki. No longer was this just a mock battle. This was a rare opportunity for Izuku to finally confront Katsuki about what had been bothering him. Katsuki, on the other hand, felt like he was on the verge of a breakdown. Why? Out of all the students in the class he ends up being one of the ones I face, damn it, I can't do this. Katsuki started to get clammy, and his breathing started to accelerate, but he remembered the advice his mother had given him. Remember what the hag told you. Slow deep breaths, in and out. The deep breaths helped Katsuki regain control of his nerves. As much as he dreaded the encounter, deep down he knew that he wouldn't be able to outrun the boy forever. Though that had been his intention, Katsuki knew it was extremely unrealistic. It was time to finally confront the kid he had tormented for 10 long years. Once inside the building, Tenya and Katsuki discussed their plan of attack, or at least that's what they were supposed to be doing. Neither of them had said a word to each other due to what was weighing upon their minds. 3 minutes had passed until Katsuki eventually spoke up. Boy, are we just gonna waste time sitting here, or are we going to at least try to come up with a plan? Right, a plan would be appropriate, I suppose. Forgive me, I just have a lot on my mind at the moment. Tenya responded. Me forgiving you doesn't give us a strategy, Katsuki barked. Tenya recoiled from the bluntness that came from his partner. To be fair, you haven't pitched in either, which means you are also unaware in which direction we should go. Unless you have a strategy you just haven't shared yet. Matter of fact I do, so listen up, and listen good cause I'm not repeating myself. Knowing Deku Midoryia, he's going to go after me, so I'll keep him distracted. I don't anticipate capturing him, but I think I can hold him off. That just leaves you to deal with Round Face. Stay in the room to protect the weapon, and let her come to you. Considering that she is one of the slowest people in our class, you'll have a massive speed advantage over her. If you use that, you'll catch her easily. Once you do, come to my location as reinforcement. With both of us fighting Midoriya, we'll have a better chance of capturing him. While most of the plan is sound, I don't know how wise it would be to split up. I agree with the matchups you proposed, but wouldn't it be better for us to stick close together, that way we could acquire immediate assistance if needed? Tenya questioned. Think about the type of quirks Midoriya and I have. Both our quirks possess destructive power, and because of that, what do you think will result from it? Tenya immediately pieced together what Katsuki was trying to say. The look on your face tells me you know the answer. With all the rubble and debris, Round Face would become extremely dangerous. So to avoid this, we isolate the two people who are capable of providing her ammunition. You do realize that this whole plan depends on whether Midoriya pursues you. What makes you so sure that he will? Katsuki walked towards the entrance of the room, not bothering to look back as he answered Tenya. Because he always has chased after me. Katsuki responded. As he walked away, a thought crossed his mind. Even though it should have been the other way around. So Izuku, what do you think would be the best strategy for us to beat Ida and Bakugo? Ichako asked as she held the blueprints of the building. She was met with silence, and then she noticed Izuku staring blankly at his copy of the blueprints. Hey Izuku, are you okay? She asked worriedly. Izuku's head snapped up as he was brought back to reality. Oh yeah, I'm fine. What were you asking me? I was asking you about what our best option would be to defeat the villain team. Oh, I figured that I would catch Bakugo, and you would fight Ida, Izuku replied. That's it? You just want us to split up? Ichako asked. She was surprised with the plan Izuku was proposing. She had come to know of his analytical side, and as a result she thought that the plan would be a bit more detailed. I'm sorry Ichako, it's just that I need to fight Bakugo by myself. It's important for me. Izuku said as he looked down to the ground. Ichako gave him a consoling look before asking, Izuku, if you don't mind me asking, what's the deal between you and Bakugo? I noticed that whenever you see him you get a bit down, and he also seems to go out of his way to avoid you. Izuku sighed before answering. The history between Bakugo and I is complicated. To give you the short version, it's like this: when we were kids we were good friends. However, as we got older we started to drift apart. It got to the point where he hated me, and for a while I hated him. There was always a small part of me though that hoped that things maybe would go back to the way they were before. Now that I have a chance to finally confront him, I want to seize the opportunity. Hopefully, you understand Ichako. She didn't respond. I wish I could Izuku, but honestly I can't. From the way he ignores you, it's obvious that he doesn't share the same sentiment. Why are you going so far out of your way to try and rekindle your friendship with him? Am I not good enough? Izuku noticed the frown Ichako had on her face and asked, Hey, are you alright? Did I bombard you with a story? Izuku asked with sincerity. No, I'm fine. I just have some jitters, since I have to fight Ida and all. Oh, don't worry, Ichako. I have a plan so that you and him will be on a more even playing field. All you'll have to do is Ochako tried to listen as best as she could to Izuku's plan, but she couldn't shake off the feeling that in Izuku's eyes she was playing second fiddle to the blonde-haired teen. After 5 minutes had passed, Ochako and Izuku entered the building. Alright Ochako, go ahead and look for the weapon. Be on the lookout for the signal. Izuku told his partner. Right. She replied. As she ran off, Izuku ran through the various hallways scoping out the space. He anticipated that Tenya would be where the weapon was, so the only person he had to worry about was Katsuki. As he was looking for the blonde-haired member of Team D, he rounded the corner, and once he did he stopped dead in his tracks. On the opposite end of the hallway, a pair of red eyes met his gaze. Neither of the two moved a muscle, much less made an attempt to speak to one another. In a separate room, the rest of Class 1 observed the showdown from a series of monitors. Noting that both of them were just standing there, the student with purple spheres for hair asked, why are neither of them moving? The rest of the class seemed to have the same question. All Might stroked his chin. He was just as perplexed as his students were. From what he'd seen earlier, Izuku wasn't nervous, so the sudden hesitance coming from the boy had surprised him. Perhaps there may be some history between them, he wondered. Maybe one of them has some type of mind control quirk, Kaminari suggested. You told, did you already forget what type of quirks they had? You saw both of them in action just this morning. Jiro replied as she rolled her eyes. Oh yeah, you're right, sorry, Kaminari said with a sheepish smile. I dunno, I think it's kinda cool how Midori and Bakugo are facing off like that. It kinda reminds me of a scene from an old western, said the student with pink hair and skin. An old wa, another student with spiky red hair and pointed teeth questioned. Back in the building, both Izuku and Katsuki had remained stationary. Neither of them broke eye contact, however Izuku was the one to break the silence. Kakanai. Don't waste your breath, Midoriya. You know why we're here, and it's not to talk. Katsuki responded. Tiny explosions popped off in his hand as he prepared himself to engage in battle. Izuku disregarded Katsuki's response entirely. Kakin, what happened to you? Ever since that day with the slime villain, you haven't been the same. Your confidence, your pride, your ambition, they're all gone. Instead of giving him an answer, Katsuki rushed him. He extended his arm forward and threw a powerful blast. Izuku batted his arm away and landed a heavy blow to his liver. Saliva poured from Katsuki's mouth as he held the right side of his abdomen. Katsuki expected to find at least a little glee in Izuku's eyes after landing such a blow. He figured that Izuku would relish the chance of exact revenge. Instead, he was met with a look of overwhelming pity. Using his other hand, he pointed it at Izuku's face and let loose another explosion. Using 5% full cowling, Izuku was able to intercept the attack and force Katsuki to dispel the blast over his head. Grabbing Katsuki's arm, Izuku slung him over his shoulder and threw him into the ground with a great amount of force. Spittle flew from Katsuki's lips upon hitting the concrete. Using his quirk, Katsuki propelled himself from the ground back onto his feet. Rushing in once again, Katsuki threw a wild right hook. That right hook is far too wide to work, not to mention it's low as well. This is the sloppiest I've ever seen Kakin fight. Izuku thought. The green-haired teen easily countered Katsuki with a hard smash to the jaw. Katsuki went careening into the ground and tumbled for a couple of feet. The blonde-haired teen slowly picked himself up and used the back of his hand to wipe away the trail of blood that was leaking from his mouth. Izuku slid back into his fighting stance once he saw Katsuki arise. With a roar, Katsuki again charged Izuku with reckless abandon. After a little bit of searching, Ochako found the weapon. Via her microtransceiver, she let Izuku know that she had found it. In response to the news, she received a garbled okay. She peeked around the room to see where Tenya was. He stood there, however he wasn't as attentive as he should have been. Wow, zoning out like that is unlike Iida. If I sneak, I can maybe capture the weapon without fighting him. She tiptoed towards the missile, but before she knew it, it was gone from its original spot. That was close. A second later, and you would have captured the weapon, Tenya said as he held the missile. He ran with it and quickly placed it on the other side of the room. In almost a blink of an eye, Tenya was back in front of Ochako. Darn it, I was so close. Ochako thought to herself. She looked around the floor to see if she could use anything to her advantage. On the floor there were random pieces of lumber and other miscellaneous items as well. How can any of this help me? She thought. Izuku had told her she needed to be resourceful to avoid being captured, but she had no idea how to utilize any of the items on the floor to her advantage. She got cracked in the side by a kick from Tenya and was sent tumbling. Forgive me, Uraraka, but I know you are a formidable foe, which is why I can't afford to take it easy, Tenya said as he approached her. Ochako frantically searched to find anything to help her. However, as she looked at the various pieces of lumber, scrap metal, and cinder blocks scattering the floor, it clicked on what she could do to give her a fighting chance. Katsuki stood bloodied, battered, and bruised. His face had swollen up from all the punches he had taken, and blood was pouring from his nose and mouth. He breathed heavily in rasped breaths, fighting his hardest to resist blacking out. On the other hand, Izuku stood there without so much as a scratch on him. The boy was able to counter virtually everything Katsuki threw at him. Katsuki hacked up a wad of blood before throwing a wobbly punch. Izuku dodged and let Katsuki fall face first into the ground. The green-haired teen turned his head to look at the fallen form of his opponent, a look of concern plastered onto his face. Katsuki gritted his teeth as he picked himself up. Each time he tried to attack Izuku, he didn't see the mighty opponent that stood before him. Rather, he kept on visualizing the boy he had put through hell for 10 years. The image of the tearful expression Izuku used to consistently wear was embedded deep into Katsuki's mind. It made him hesitate on every attack he threw at his former childhood friend. In the monitor room, Kaminari decided to give his input on how the fight was shaping up so far. For Sparky Boom Man's sake, I hope he's giving it his all. For the last couple of minutes he's been getting killed. No kidding. Midori doesn't look like it, but he's an absolute beast when it comes to fighting. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought he already had experience fighting a villain. The girl with pink skin added. So would I, Ashido. Kaminari agreed. As the students chatted away, All Might carefully observed how the fight was playing out. He knew that his successor was strong, but he did not expect for him to dominate the fight like he had. All Might had learned from Shota that Katsuki was susceptible to not giving his full effort. However, he knew that particular flaw was not the reason for why Katsuki was doing so poorly in his bout with Izuku. From what he'd seen, Katsuki was trying his hardest to land a blow on Izuku, however, due to sloppy technique and stellar reaction time from Izuku, his efforts had been fruitless. He deduced that the reason for his poor performance had to be because of a mental block. However, what exactly that mental block was proved to be a mystery for the symbol of peace. Katsuki hobbled over to where Izuku stood. His body felt like it was about to give out, but he pushed through the pain. With all the strength he could muster, he swung his arm, intent on making this to be the blow that counted. Anticipation grew in his eyes as his limb neared the face of his adversary. The small glimmer of hope he had was shattered once he saw Izuku catch his arm. He clenched his teeth as he waited for another counterattack, however it never came. Instead, Izuku simply forced his arm away. By now, Izuku could no longer rein in his worry for his former friend. Akin, this isn't like you. You would never be this sloppy in a fight. It almost seems like you're scared to attack me. Are you really that upset that I saved you from that villain? Izuku questioned. You idiot, Katsuki said through clenched teeth. Akin, what did you say? You're a goddamn idiot. Do you really think that, because you saved me, I'm the way I am? Honestly, I don't know, which is why I need you to talk to me. You wouldn't get it. You weren't told all your life that you were going to be special. You weren't told that you would grow up to be the best hero society has seen. Katsuki yelled. As much as those words stung, Izuku knew that they were true. Before he met All Might, to many he just seemed to be a quirkless nobody who possessed an unattainable dream. You're right, I never was told those things, but in the end I didn't let that stop me from pursuing my dream of being a hero. But from the beginning practically everyone I know has rooted for you. I just don't understand what has changed. You really are dense, aren't you? Ever since that day with the slime villain I've realized that my life has been a lie, Katsuki choked out. What do you mean? I wasn't destined to be the strongest nor the best hero. That day, you rescued me like I was some little kid. Then imagine my surprise when I learned that you didn't even use your full power when fighting the sludge bastard. It was then when I was made aware of the marginal gap of strength between us. Didn't even use my full power. Where did he get that idea from? Izuku wondered. Katsuki continued to speak. But that's not the worst part. That day not only did you save my life, you also saved my chance of becoming a pro hero, despite everything I had done to you. It was at that moment I realized that you were also a better hero than me. Do you understand now, Midoryia? You're a breathing reminder of how much of a goddamn failure I am. Izuku was rendered speechless. The pain in Katsuki's voice caught him off guard. He couldn't wrap his mind around the fact that Katsuki had been internalizing all of this for the past couple of months. The world Katsuki and others had constructed for him was torn down the day he had saved him. It made sense now as to why he seemed so lost. He felt the same way when All Might had told him that he couldn't become a hero. However, the difference between him and Katsuki was that he didn't cave in from despair. Imagine thinking your whole life that your future as the greatest hero is set in stone just to find out you've been fed nothing more than garbage. Then on top of that, you were made brutally aware just how flawed you are. Would you be the same person? Tears pricked the corners of Katsuki's eyes, but he used the back of his gauntleted hand to quickly wipe them away. Izuku didn't respond, but he could sympathize with Katsuki because he saw where he was coming from. Throughout his childhood, he had his fair share of turmoil, a majority of it due to the individual that stood in front of him. As a result, feelings of inadequacy and uncertainty of the future were common feelings for him. However, recently things had changed for him. While his life had initially been filled with sorrow, he was able to find solace through his new friends and family. On the contrary, the solace that Katsuki used to have was now replaced with sorrow. He still had people that believed in him, such as the teachers and former classmates at Aldera Junior High, but Izuku realized that the issue was that he now didn't believe in himself. Guilt, inadequacy, and a variety of other feelings clouded the mind of his past friend. Izuku couldn't think of a best way to articulate what he wanted to say, so he simply spoke his mind. "Back and listen, you can't change what happened in the past. You don't think I know that?" Katsuki snapped. "But you have the power to shape your future by what you do in the present. Someone I met told me that it's important to know how to make the best of any situation. When I told you that I thought you had the potential to become a great hero, I meant it. You can't reverse all the pain you have caused others, but you can become a hero that's worth admiring. I think this to be true, the only question is, do you as well?" Katsuki took a moment to really ponder over the question he was presented with. Did he himself still believe that he was capable of becoming a great hero? For most of his life, whenever a challenge had presented itself, he went out of his way to meet it head-on. Even if he failed to meet expectations, that would only compel him to work harder than he did before. The endeavor of becoming the best version of himself seemed to be an enormous task, but at the end of the day it was just that, a task. He had already run away from the challenge of confronting Izuku. Would he run away from this challenge as well? Izuku narrowly dodged the explosive-powered punch Katsuki threw at him. Izuku caught sight of eyes, and to his contentment, he found the flames that were thought to be extinguished, roaring in their full glory. He couldn't help the small smirk that had crossed his face. "Guess, I have my answer." "Umph." Achako exclaimed as she hit another wall. The whole time she had been fighting with Tenya, he had thrashed her. Fortunately, she was rather resilient, and because of that she was just one more object away before her plan came into fruition. As she got up she touched another piece of lumber that had been lying around. Tenya prepared to rush her again, but he stopped promptly. He noticed a myriad of shadows now occupied the ground. He looked towards Achako, hoping to get an answer as to why. She didn't respond, instead she pointed towards the ceiling. Tenya's eyes widened as he saw a multitude of miscellaneous items hovering above him. If he moved, an object was bound to fall atop of him once she released it. He started to beat himself up for allowing that significant blunder to happen. Because I was so narrow-minded, I never thought about what she may have had planned. I was under the impression that I was in control of this fight, but she played me right into her hand. In the monitor room, the students of One marveled at the plan Achako had constructed. "Wow, your rocket played Iida like a damn fiddle," Kaminari commented. She certainly did make the most of her circumstances. Despite the matchup being overwhelmingly in Iida's favor, she was resourceful enough to utilize her surroundings to her advantage. Because of her ingenuity, it seems that the playing field is finally even. Gyoirozu added. "Personally, what I find amazing is how much of a pounding she can take," the boy with purple balls for hair exclaimed. After giving his input, the class promptly went silent. The boy gave an almost pleading look to his other male classmates, however none of them obliged him. Getting frustrated, he said, "Come on, I can't be the only person thinking that." The girl with large oval eyes, dark green hair, and the mannerisms of a frog spoke up. Even if there were others in the class who thought that, they know that right now is not the time and place to voice such lecherous thoughts. Mineta, ribbed. Young Asui is correct. Those types of comments are simply inappropriate in the school environment. If I hear you make another comment such as that one, disciplinary action will be administered. Is that understood, young Mineta? All Might asked him. Yes, Mineta grumbled. In the room where the weapon was contained, Tenya had remained stationary, whereas Achako slowly approached the weapon. At first he didn't see it, but he now saw that Achako had crafted herself out a path so that she wouldn't get hit by any of the debris in case she had to release it. Tenya gritted his teeth. If he hesitated any longer she would without fail capture the weapon, however if he rushed in recklessly he would be defeated. Deciding to gamble, he ran his fastest to try and reached her before she captured the weapon. From the corner of her eye, Achako saw Tenya rapidly approaching. She quickly pressed her fingers together to release all the items that loomed above them. To her horror, Tenya had cleared the room before any of the items had a chance to hit him. However, a yelp from the armored villain told Achako that her plan had somewhat worked. A cinder block had clipped Tenya and ended up damaging the mufflers on one of his legs. Realizing he would be significantly slower, Achako thought to herself, all I have to do is touch him, then I win. She barely blocked the hook kick Tenya had hurled. Even though he was a lot slower than what he was before, Achako realized that in the end he was still faster than her, and she was pretty sure he had more experience when it came to fighting than she did. This won't be as easy as I thought it was going to be. I need to find a way to defeat him quickly, otherwise the timer will run out before the weapon is captured. Hopefully, you did what you needed to do, Izuku, but you have to hurry. We don't have much time left. For the first time in the fight, Izuku was on the defensive. After Katsuki had found motivation, he now was able to fight on par with him, while 5% full cowling was active. All of Katsuki's blows were now sharper, each with the intent of bringing him down. Katsuki shot his palm forward, and the explosion in turn clipped the side of Izuku's face. His green hair and some of his face were now visible. Using 20% full cowling, Izuku jumped from the wall into a punch which made Katsuki's head snap quickly to the side. Taking advantage of the situation, Izuku started to run to the area of the building he was supposed to be in. He had been so immersed with his fight with Katsuki, he had completely forgotten about the time limit. This is for sure cutting it close. I definitely need to thank and apologize to Achako after this. Behind him, he could hear the sound of footsteps that weren't his. As expected, Katsuki was trailing behind him. You didn't think, after getting hit by a few lucky punches from you, I would just let you run away, did you? Katsuki yelled as he chased after Izuku. Due to being in the heat of the battle, Izuku responded in a way that was unlike him. I don't know, Kaken. From the way you look, it seems like you got hit by a lot more than a few punches. Katsuki growled in return and pushed his legs even harder to catch up with the green-haired teen. As the class watched from the monitors, the student with red hair and pointed teeth couldn't hold back his excitement of what he was witnessing. This is so manly. I don't know what Midoriya said to Bakugo to get him fired up like this, but whatever it was, it worked. Of course Midoriya has been doing amazing, but I didn't know Bakugo had firepower like that. All Might smiled intently at the screen. I believe young Kirishima to be right in his assessment of the situation. Whatever mental block young Bakugo had, obviously it's now gone. You know, honestly the boy is a lot like Nana. I'm pretty sure you would have been fond of him too, if you were still around. The thought of his old teacher made his smile waver slightly, but not enough for anyone to notice. I'll tell you what, this is a second wind, if I've ever seen one, and trust me I've seen plenty. Mineta chirped. Once again the class went silent after Mineta gave his input on the situation. Except this time, snickering could be heard from Kaminari as he covered his mouth to prevent himself from bursting out in laughter. Pierre rolled her eyes as he started to tear up. Don't be such a child, Kaminari. It wasn't that funny. What do you mean it wasn't that funny? Did you not get the joke? He's saying that he's seen a lot of second wins because he watches a whole bunch of poor. I know what he meant, you doofus. Jiru interjected, a hint of red grazing her cheeks. Izuku eventually made it to the designated area, which was directly below the room that contained the weapon. Through his micro-transceiver, he told Achako that he was in position so that she could get ready. No response came through, so he just had to hope that she received the message. Not much later, Katsuki arrived as well. There's nowhere to run, Midoriya. I thought you were smart enough to know not to corner yourself like this, but fortunately you proved me wrong. For the longest time the cockiness was something Izuku had loathed, but in this case he was relieved to find it present in Katsuki's voice. However, Izuku returned his cockiness, because soon he would unveil his trump card. You're mistaken, Kaken, you're trapped in here with me. Since you've been fighting your hardest, I'll do the same. Izuku took a deep breath and concentrated. Greener eyes morphed into azure ones, and the atmosphere quickly shifted. The pressure that Izuku emitted was exactly how Katsuki remembered it to be. Despite knowing that the odds were stacked against him, Katsuki charged the boy. For the first time in his life he wasn't fighting Izuku to maintain a sense of superiority. For the longest, Katsuki had considered Izuku as someone beneath him, a mere stepping stone of his path to glory. However, time had shown that notion was false. Regardless, he was determined to become the greatest hero society had ever seen. Win or lose, this would be his starting point. A sharp jab was thrown at Izuku, but with a minor head slip, Izuku was able to dodge the punch. The azure-eyed hero in training countered with a huge left to Katsuki's ribs. A sharp crunch resounded, and Katsuki gasped in pain as he felt one of his ribs crack. Katsuki was met with another punch to the face, but he gritted his teeth and planted his feet to resist blacking out. He knew he wouldn't be able to last much longer, but one thought kept running through his mind: I refuse to lose. One feature Katsuki's costume had was that the bracers he wore were able to store his nitroglycerin-like sweat. If he pulled the pin on his bracers, he would be capable of unleashing an extremely destructive blast. Seeing no other option of how to defeat Izuku, Katsuki reached to pull the pin. A split second before he fully pulled the pin out, Izuku kicked his arm straight up into the air. Katsuki's eyes widened in realization, but it was too late. A geyser of explosive power erupted from Katsuki's palm and utterly obliterated the ceiling. A couple of stories above Katsuki and Izuku, Achako laid on the ground as Tenya approached her with capture tape. She heard Izuku's message, however Kenya's natural athletic ability had proven to be too much for her. She started to mentally apologize to her partner until she heard a loud rumbling that was rapidly approaching. Tenya reached down to wrap her in the tape until he saw a large inferno of fire suddenly burst out the floor behind him. Taking advantage of his startled state, Achako touched him and as a result he floated up to the ceiling. Once the flames had dissipated, she hobbled over to the weapon to secure it. The voice of All Might blared on her microtransceiver with news that the hero team had won. Katsuki stood in place with his arm raised, mesmerized by what he just had seen. Silver eyes stared at him as he faded into unconsciousness. He had given it his all, but unfortunately for him it was not enough. As he hit the dirt, the last thought that crossed his mind was, "You may have won Midoriya today, but in the end I'll surpass you. Just you wait." Not long after, a pair of medical bots came and put Katsuki on a stretcher. As Izuku watched him get wheeled away, the silver color in his eyes faded and immediately he fell to his knees as a wave of fatigue washed over him. He felt a strong hand on his shoulder and turned around to see that it was All Might. "You've made me proud, young Midoriya. We'll talk some more later, but as for right now let's head back to the monitor room for grading." As All Might started to walk away, Izuku asked him, "What about Achako and Iida? Aren't they coming with us too?" "Unfortunately, they also have sustained injuries that require the attention of Recovery Girl." "Are the injuries serious?" Izuku asked worriedly. "They're not too severe. None are on the same magnitude as the injuries young Bakugo acquired," All Might responded. "That's still not very reassuring," Izuku thought to himself. Not long after, Izuku stood in front of his classmates as he awaited for All Might to grade his performance and establish who the MVP was in the trial. "I believe the MVP for this trial to be Uraraka," All Might boomed. "No offense to Uraraka, but what about Midoriya? He was obviously the best fighter on the field, and also he was the one who created the distraction for her to capture the weapon," Kaminari commented. "Midoriya wasted a lot of time fighting Bakugo. For whatever reason, he didn't capture Bakugo when he had multiple chances to, and in the end, Bakugo started to give him issues. In a real-life situation, time is the biggest factor a hero has to deal with, so they can't afford to waste even a second." Yaoyorozu responded, which elicited an ah from Kaminari. Bakugo on the other hand should have retreated once he saw that he wasn't going to be able to defeat Midoriya. He let himself get injured badly, and had Iida needed backup, he wouldn't have been in the position to help him adequately. And then while Iida's approach to fighting Achako was sound, he failed to factor in the objects that were lying around in the room. Uraraka deserves to be the MVP because she was able to improvise when under extreme pressure. Even though the matchup was extremely unfavorable for her, her resilience and resourcefulness allowed her to best Iida. "I couldn't have said that any better myself," All Might exclaimed as he shot her a thumbs up. "Nevertheless, I'd say all of them did a wonderful job overall. With that being said, let's move on to the next match." As the appropriate teams got ready, Izuku approached his mentor and asked, "Would it be okay if I went down to the nurse's office to check on Achako and Iida?" All Might saw that the worried expression Izuku had previously still remained. He put a hand on Izuku's shoulder and told him that it would be fine. Izuku thanked All Might and proceeded to go down to the nurse's office to check on his friends. Once he stepped inside, he saw a Recovery Girl, who did not look happy in the slightest. Seeing him from the corner of her eye, Recovery Girl approached Izuku to see what had brought him here. "I appreciate you not being the one to get injured this time, but as you can imagine I'm not necessarily happy having to treat 3 different kids. We all went our hardest for a test we had earlier today if that makes you feel any better," Izuku said, hoping it would. "It really doesn't, but thanks for trying. Anyways, I figure you didn't just come down to say hi, did you?" Izuku shook his head. "I came down here to check on Uraraka and Iida." "Ah, makes sense. Well, regarding your lady friend, she's currently healed and awake right now. She'll probably be groggy for the next day or two, but she'll recover just fine. Iida on the other hand, is asleep as of right now. Since one of his mufflers on his right calf was damaged beyond repair, I had to perform surgery to remove it." Recovery Girl saw the look of concern that was plastered on Izuku's face. "To clarify, this surgery won't hinder his career as a hero if that's what you're worried about. Given the nature of his quirk, his muffler will grow back." Izuku let out a sigh of relief after hearing the news. However, the thought of the red-eyed, blonde-headed teen pushed itself to the forefront of his mind. "What about Bakugo?" Izuku asked. "He certainly sustained the worst injuries out of the 3. Couple broken ribs, a fractured jaw, and a shattered orbital bone most certainly makes that case. Needless to say, he's currently asleep as well. He'll recover, but he'll need to take it easy for the next couple of days. But the beating he took, you would have thought the person he fought absolutely despised him. Would it be alright if I went to see Ichako? Izuku asked as he tried to change the subject. Oh yes, don't let me stop you from talking to your lady friend. I was getting ready to send her back anyways. Izuku thanked her and proceeded to head towards Ichako's bed. Before he could make his way towards her, the voice of Recovery Girl rang out once more. Me, and my old age, I almost forgot to tell you. I think you made an excellent choice, Sonny, she said, directing her gaze to where Ichako rested. Izuku went beet red due to the older heroine's assumption and walked faster towards the brunette. Izuku saw Ichako lying in her bed and noticed that she seemed lost in thought. Not wanting to scare her, he gently called her name. No response. He said her name once again with a bit more stern. Still no response. He blurted out her name, which made her jump in surprise. She clutched her chest, thinking that her heart might beat out of it. After calming down a bit, she finally addressed Izuku. Sorry Izuku, I didn't see you there. It's no problem, sorry I scared you like that, he responded. So what are you doing here, she asked. I came down here to check on you, Aniida. I just wanted to make sure that both of you were alright. Ichako knew that gestures such as those were natural for Izuku, but it didn't stop the warm and fuzzy feeling that began to grow inside her chest. A blush slowly crawled its way onto her face as she said, I appreciate that Izuku, but you don't have to worry. The recovery girl said I should be okay tomorrow, and Iida should be fine soon as well. Yeah, she told me that when I came inside the office, but I wanted to see you two anyways. It's a good thing you two didn't end up like Bakugo. From what she told me, his injuries were the worst of the three. Ichako's good mood slightly deflated after Izuku made mention of Katsuki. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you, but All Might said you were MVP in the battle. Most of the class seemed really impressed at your performance. Yaoi Rozu especially had good things to say about you, Izuku cheerfully stated. Really? I'm honestly surprised, but happy to hear it. Ichako said, trying to match Izuku's cheerfulness. She didn't do a good job because Izuku noticed that her excitement didn't seem genuine. Ichako, what's wrong? What are you talking about Izuku? I'm fine. No you're not, I noticed that you seemed down before the test started and you still seem that way. Please Ichako, just talk to me. Ichako took a deep breath before answering Izuku. It's because of Bakugo. What? Did he say something to you? Izuku asked in a slightly protective tone. It's not that, it's just he didn't understand why you went out of your way to try and become friends with him again, even though he didn't show any interest. I thought maybe it was because I'm not a good enough friend. Saying it out loud, I realize how silly it sounds, but I was just scared that you would abandon me if you did regain him as a friend. Her eyes widened as she felt Izuku place his hand over hers. Ichako, I would never abandon you. I can say confidently that you are the best friend I've ever had. I never sought out Bakugo with the intention of him replacing you as my friend. I sought him out because I wanted to try and help him recover a part of who he was. Because of your support, he was able to do that and more. I promise Ichako, your friendship is something I will never take for granted. Hearing the sincerity and passion in his voice made Ichako overwhelmed with emotion. She wrapped her arms around Izuku to pull him into a tight hug. Izuku's face went red as a fire hydrant, but he returned the hug as well. They both stayed like this for a while, both blissfully unaware of their surroundings. Recovery Girl saw both teens firmly embracing each other, and she couldn't help the look of utter glee that crossed her face. Ah, to be young again, she silently thought to herself. Ichako was the first to pull away from the hug. Thank you Izuku, that's what I needed to hear. She said softly. Izuku with a hue of red still on his face responded, no problem, I'm glad I was able to cheer you up. Recovery Girl slunk over to Ichako and Izuku to let them know that they could head back to their class when ready. Both teens noticed that she spoke to them with unusual giddiness, but they decided that it wasn't anything to stress over. As the students returned back to the classroom, a couple of them clustered around Izuku. Not long after, they began to bombard the boy with a multitude of various comments about his performance in the battle simulation. When your eyes went silver, you became a total badass. I don't know how you were able to kick Bakugo's arm right before he fired that huge blast. It was insane to see, Ishido said. Dude, I don't know what was said, but your fight with Bakugo has been the manliest thing I've seen in a while. The student with spiky red hair exclaimed. Yeah, I think I can speak for all of us when I say that your performance got us all fired up, a tall muscular student with spiky brown hair commented. Eyes, I think we are overwhelming him. We haven't even formally introduced ourselves yet. Asui commented. That's right. My name is Mina Ishido. Hopefully, we can get to know each other better, Midori. Ishido said in a teasing tone. My name is Ejiro Kirishima. I'm looking forward to getting stronger with you, said the student with the spiky red hair. And I'm irrelevant. Izuku thought he misheard what the student with spiky brown said his name was. I beg your pardon. Oh, I said my name was Sato. Sorry if I didn't speak clearly enough. And I'm Tsuyu Asui, but you please just call me Tsuyu. After they introduced themselves, they once again began to bombard Izuku with praise regarding his performance. Izuku looked over towards Ichako and saw that she wasn't faring much better. A small smile crossed his face. At least I'm not alone. After the bell had rung for dismissal, Izuku exited the building and started on his way home. Before he could make it far, he heard a familiar voice call out his name. Midoria. Izuku turned around and saw that it was Katsuki, who was wrapped in an abundance of bandages. Katsuki hobbled over to where Izuku stood, never breaking eye contact as he approached him. Once he got face to face with Izuku, he told him, "Listen up, nerd. I just wanted to talk to you about some stuff that's been on my mind for a while. Don't expect this to be a regular thing though." Izuku was surprised that Katsuki went out of his way to seek him out. "Alright, what did you want to talk to me about?" Katsuki's amped demeanor started to decline once he brought to mind what he wanted to talk to Izuku about. Since the day of the slime villain incident, there was one thing in particular that Izuku said that Katsuki couldn't forget. For whatever reason, you decide to pick on me despite the fact that I just genuinely want to be friends with you. Do you remember that day when you said that you wanted to be friends with me? Izuku nodded his head in response. I figured. Midoriya, I hope you understand that it will never happen. Not because of you, but because of how much of a jackass I was. Izuku was disappointed hearing the news, however he wasn't surprised. Nevertheless, you are someone I intend to surpass, Midoriya. I'll become the #1 hero, even if that means becoming stronger than All Might himself. This was a desire I've had since I was a kid, and I'm going to fulfill it. For a while, though that desire was something I thought I'd lost until today. So for that, I wanted to tell you thanks. He spat out. He opened his mouth once more, as if he had something else to say, but ultimately he decided to close it. For the second time that day, Izuku's brain crashed. Katsuki saw the stupor Izuku was in and snapped at him. Oi, I hope you heard that, nerd. Because those words will never come out of my mouth again. You can bet your life on it. Izuku dumbly nodded at him. TCH, I'll see you tomorrow, dork. Izuku continued to stare at Katsuki in disbelief as he walked away. Never in his existence would he have anticipated that Katsuki would thank him. As he eyed Katsuki down, he jumped in surprise after he felt a hand firmly grasp his shoulder. Iida stood behind him, a serious expression painted onto his face. Midoriya, may I talk to you? Sure, I didn't want to go home anyways. Izuku didn't voice his thoughts though because he figured it must have been important with all the urgency in Kenya's voice. He turned around and asked, what did you want to talk to me about? Deciding just to metaphorically rip the band-aid off, Tenya asked, where did all those burns on your body come from? And please don't give me an excuse such as you fell off some monkey bars. If I suspect that you are lying, I won't hesitate to report what I saw to the principal. Izuku went pale as a ghost after hearing Tenya's question. The first question that popped into his mind was, how did why you know about them? Izuku had made sure to get changed as quickly as possible so that no one would be able to see the burns. Not long after you left, I departed as well because I wanted to give myself enough time to change and mentally prepare myself for the simulation. When I saw you, you were dressed for the most part, however I noticed that there were a whole bunch of burns on your back. Now that I answered your question, will you please answer mine? Izuku knew how perceptive Tenya was and figured it would be too much of a risk to blatantly lie. Additionally, if he left out some details, Tenya would no doubt try and pry. Having no other options, Izuku told Tenya everything. Izuku told him that Katsuki was the one responsible for his burns, how long Katsuki had been tormenting him, and the extent of which he did. As Tenya processed all the information, he couldn't help but feel angry that someone like the person Izuku described had somehow got into a school meant for heroes. But you can't tell anyone, Iida. You need to promise me. He's not the exact same person he was before. You have to believe me. Izuku realized that Tenya hadn't responded yet, so he called his name again. Iida. Tenya was jolted back into reality. Do you promise not to tell anyone? Iida looked at Izuku and said, if you said that he stopped tormenting you, you have my word that I won't speak this information to anyone else. Izuku let out a sigh of relief. Thank you, Iida, for understanding. I'll see you tomorrow. As Izuku walked away, Iida stood there and contemplated what he should do. He had given his word to Izuku that he wouldn't tell anybody what he had seen. However, he wasn't entirely sure whether Izuku was telling the truth about Katsuki. For all Tenya knew, Katsuki still could have malicious intent towards his friend. Not to mention, a person capable of doing what he had done to Izuku had no place in the UA. For Tenya, it boiled down to what he valued more, his friend's trust or his friend's well-being. Both were extremely important to him, but in his heart he knew which one was more. Thanks for watching this video. Part 4 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.